Sorry, I didn't see you there. Well, I'm going to be reading out a Lion King creepypasta, kinda. This is the first time I'm actually reading out a creepypasta on my channel, so just be a bit wary. There are so many creepypastas out there about haunted video games, things of that nature. I've read them and always just passed them off, and just that. Fake, stupid creepypasta stories. Though they were very entertaining. I never expected something similar to happen to me. It seemed like the worst things always tend to happen to those most unexpected and cynical, doesn't it? Well, I was at the time of disappointment in my life. I had become very ill and forced to drop out of college. I hated having my dreams put on hold, and I've been suffering from a mild case of depression because of it. But there was still a comfort that can only come from being back home. That reassured me a bit, but there was still the boredom I had to deal with. No job, no college, and I hate to say it, but little friends, most still in college themselves, made each day drag by. The days spent watching TV and old VHS movies in that familiar living room gave me some inspiration to find a way to ease my ever increasing tide in my VHS and DVD library, and dwindled down to only my old worn-out Disney movies left unwatched. So I decided to watch one of my all-time favourites, The Lion King. A colourful, cute lion cubs reminded me of an almost forgotten piece of my past. It was the old 1994 Lion King PC video game I used to play constantly as a child. My mum and I used to spend hours trying to win that old game. The flood of memories sent me walking to my bedroom, to the ancient computer that was still sat on the desk in the corner. I'd been so proud of that old computer when I was first brought it at the age of 11. I'd saved up enough money, enough of my allowance, to buy it myself. It was heartwarming to see an old startup screen and hear the old jingle as Windows XP started up. Never mind. Grown to life, and I clicked start button to search for my old games. Sadly, the game folder was barren and empty. Disappointed, I walked to ask my mum what happened to all our games. She looked a little sad, probably seeing the dysfunction in my eyes. She told me since I had purchased a brand new laptop a month or so ago, my dad was going to sell the old computer. He had taken all the old games and documents and removed them. She then suggested I ask my dad if he'd save any of them. Later that night, my dad returned from his job at the factory. I'm going to skip it a little bit because it's going to kind of make of hours. Gladly, my dad did find and download the 1994 Lion King Sega game my old favourite. Now this game isn't like the modern Disney games out there. It wasn't a babyish activity centre or storybook game. It was a story, yes, but it was an action game. The gist of it was that you started out as young Simba. As he defeats villains, hyenas, young Simba could defeat these adversaries by simply jumping on them. Older Simba was oddly more violent. He could slash, maul, and flip his enemies, some of them even showing small amounts of blood flying from them with each hit. Nothing gory, and you could never see any injuries on his enemies, but at the age of 4, it seemed like a major carnage. The next morning, I was glad to have the whole house to myself to play the game again. My dad was at work and my mum was off to Lexington, Kentucky, to help my almost 80-year-old grandma. It was times like this that it pays to have no siblings, so I grabbed a bowl of M&Ms and some sweet tea and retreated to my room for the day. My dad had installed the game into the Buckley old grey and black computer that night but he didn't see if it had worked or not. I prayed it did. As I clicked on the file, it worked to my delight, and when I saw the grinny started up screen, a picture of Pedrock with Rafiki holding up baby Simba as I passed enter to start the game. Timon appeared on the screen and said the old familiar words, "It starts." I worked my way through the colourful levels with ease. I remembered every trick and bonus. Everything went well, and I was having a good old-fashioned fun like I used to as a little kid. I made it to the last level, the Pride Rock level, where adult Simba battles Scar. I made it halfway through the level, battling Scar 2 of the 3 times and killing off hyena after hyena. I was having a perfect game until I made one mistake. I misjudged a jump and missed the platform I was aiming for, sending Simba plunging into the darkness between. That's when things started to go wrong. Instead of just fading to black and starting the level over like it was supposed to, the screen began flashing random colours, mainly red, black and purple, and a sound that isn't supposed to be in the game. I should know, I've played it hundreds of times and memorised every part. The sound was from the movie. It was from the infamous stampede scene where Mufasa fell to his doom. It was Simba screamed, "No." Then there was a screeching sound so loud I jumped and turned down my speakers. I figured that is just that this was just a hacked version of the game, and someone thought it'd make the game better to add sound clips from the movie, sorry. But then instead of returning to the level I was on, the game restarted from the beginning. That made me annoyed since I gotten so far, but the start-up screen changed instead of the cheery scene I remembered from my childhood. It was a dark, blurry, odd coloured, red, black, blue. It almost looked like a night shot of the original screen, but I thought it just be a glitch and press start anyway. Instead of Timon saying his normal phrase, there was a strip of red writing which seemed to flash and twist on the screen. It said a quote that I recognised and actually loved. The boundaries which divide our life from death are at best shadowy and vague. Who shall say where the one ends and the other begins? A quote from my favourite author, Edgar Allan Poe. I was actually a little happy to see my favourite quote, but couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Why was it on a Disney game? And I knew for sure it didn't belong there, but I played anyway. The first level was all wrong. First off, I had no lives when I should have had 8. The sky was pitch black. The first level was usually a cheery, sunny level. Worst of all, young Simba, was lying down in an unnatural crumpled position. His body, bloody and he was bloody and shaking. This wasn't the Disney norm at all. For the heck of it'll tried to move him with the arrow keys, and he reached his arm out slowly and dragged himself along the ground, leaving a trail of crimson blood behind him, like a slug leaves a trail of slime. The progression was slow, but the crisp autumn weather outside made me excited for Halloween, so I decided to try and play this disturbed version of my favourite game. When I needed to jump, the half-dead lion cub jumped almost like normal, except each jump he lost a body part. The bloody part of him fell into the crevice he was jumping. Each jump made our crumpled hero bloodier and bloodier. At the end of the level, the hyena was different too. His eyes glowed red, and he looked as if he had been slashed multiple times. I defeated him with 2 jumps, just in time as Simba's last leg fell off. I wondered what awaited me on the next level, as the first one faded to black. The I can't wait to be king level was upside down and seemed to be melting on the screen, as well as being darker coloured than it should. Simba was back to the original state. He was on the first disturbed level he dragged along as he made his way to the rhino. He jumped on the rhino's head, his tail falling off along the way. The rhino flips him up into the trees, the arms of the monkeys. This is the part when Simba was supposed to jump on the heads of the giraffes over water to the other side, but there was a problem. The giraffes were beheaded bloodily with amazingly, disgustingly detailed. I could see the bones sticking out. I thought whoever had this game had even more of a dark side than me. But I wondered how battered Simba could get across the water. which was, in this version, red blood. But he jumped from giraffe to giraffe by clinging to their necks. The blood made him slip off quickly, so I had to jump quicker and skin with frightening realism. It looked more like a photo I had seen taken at fur farms of dead animals. The ostrich launched in an odd, distorted way as it ran. The rest of the level was about the same. The monkeys beheaded and the tree on fire, and Simba crawled through the upside down madness. As that level faded, the screeching sound returned, as well as something completely unexpected. It was Mufasa's face. But instead of the gold colour he should be, he was black. His eyes glowed green. He opened his mouth and said in a hissing voice, "Scar's innocent. It was me." What did that mean? Was this twisted game trying to pass off that Mufasa was supposed to have let go of the cliff on purpose? I'm going to skip a little bit more. The very realistic blood started dripping down the screen. So realistic, I was tempted to reach out and touch it. It indulged my temptation and was petrified as my finger became covered in sticky crimson blood. As can be expected, I screamed and ran from the room. I ran into the bathroom and slammed the door shut. My hands were trembling as I reached for the light switch. I half expected that distorted Mufasa face to be in front of me as I flipped on the light. Of course it wasn't, so I just sat down, curled into a ball, and suddenly hated being alone. I yearned for my parents to come home. It didn't help I could still hear that scream from the other room, my room, where I had to sleep. As frightened as I was, I decided I had to go back and turn off that game. So I mustered up whatever courage was left in me and walked slowly back into the room. I was almost afraid to turn and look at the computer in the dark corner of the room, but when I did, I saw the blood was gone. Maybe I had just let the disturbing game get to my head, and I hallucinated the blood. I mean, it was just a game, right? Weirder still is that game had paused on its own, as if it had known that I fled the room, maybe in my panic. I had hit the enter button on the keyboard and just hadn't known it, but I sure didn't remember it. That thought was proven false as soon as my bottom made contact with the seat. For as soon as I sat down, the game started up. The screaming thankfully stopped for the time being, and curiosity was urging me to keep going. I knew my dad would take away the defective game as soon as he heard about it. So this was my only chance to see what happened next. So I kept going. I finished the crumbling elephant graveyard level and prepared for the stampede level and whatever dark twist was next. But to my surprise, everything was normal in this level. The sky was blue and the rocky canyon was a bright tan just as I remembered it. Half of me was thankful and the other half, the darker half, I hid from most people was bored. It was at the end of the level that things changed after Simba escaped the wildebeest. It was the scene where Mufasa was climbing the rocks after saving Simba from the stampede, but then something different happened. It cut to Simba staring at his dad struggling to climb up the canyon. This scene wasn't in the movie, though it was animated in just as good quality as the real movie. Simba was crying as if he knew his dad wasn't going to make it, sobbing realistically. He then stopped suddenly and turned his face toward the screen. His eyes were empty, emotionless, as he stared at me, then stood up and walked forward. The camera angle switched behind him and revealed what he was walking to, the edge, the cliff. What is this? I could only watch the horror as he just walked off the cliff to the stampede below. Then the screen cut to Mufasa's face. He saw it. He saw Simba fall to his death. His eyes were filled with tears and he looked up at his brother Scar, grinning down at him. "What are you going to do now, brother?" Scar asked menacingly, his eyes glowing an odd red and his paws dripping with blood. "What have you to live for?" "Nothing," Mufasa answered, then turned his face to the screen. "No one does." Then he let go of the cliff and fell. Then it showed Scar laughing, his face slowly morphing into a hideous skull, pieces of flesh clinging to it. His eyes started to drip blood and the screen faded black around the skull. Then he whispered, "It's true for you too, Heather." Then chuckled and disappeared. Once again I found myself running from the room. This time in hesitates. If I thought I was trembling before, then this is my own personal earthquake in the bathroom. I ended up vomiting in the toilet. Then I just sat there whispering, "It's not real, it's not real." Tears ran down my face like the blood had from scars. How did that game just say my name? That's not normal, not right. But I was the adult in this house, and at the time I was up. It was up to me to go back into that room and turn that demonic game off immediately. So I stomped into my bedroom angrily. I will not let a game control me. I glared toward the screen and noticed that Scar was gone. I was sitting there on Simba's exile level, very normal looking. It even had the appropriate sound for the game. Let's give a bit of it. So now Simba was an adult. This was the level representing him going at night to see Rafiki as an adult. He had his new powers, slashing and mauling. I'm skipping that line, my voice is going a bit. Then Mufasa reached down and opened his mouth wide, and Simba just walked in and disappeared. Rafiki then looked into the screen and whispered, "The circle of life is a lie. All die, all perish. Your time is drawing near." At least he didn't say my name again, that was a relief. The game skipped 2 whole levels, and I found myself at the start of the last level, Pride Rock. It seemed normal until I moved Simba forward. No fire, no Scar. Sorry. Instead of immediately fighting Scar as he is supposed to, he just ran through an empty level. No hyenas, no fire, no Scar. It was like this until I got to the very top of Pride Rock, where Simba and Scar are supposed to have their final battle. I was shocked at who was waiting at the top. Mufasa? He didn't even have a character in the game. I wondered for a second if I was supposed to fight him. He was Simba's father after all, but Mufasa leapt onto Simba and began to maul him, violently, ripping off Simba's right foreleg, and he flung the leg off Pride Rock. I moved Simba and he hobbled to his dad and jumped, mauling him as well. The battle was pretty even. Mufasa and Simba ripping a piece after piece of each other. After about 10 minutes of fighting, I lost control of them. Nothing I did affected the fight. They were fighting on their own now. Suddenly Simba jumped onto his father, causing them both to somersault off the edge of Pride Rock to their doom. Then the screen flashed several times. The screen turned, and the screen switched to a very realistic picture of Mufasa and Simba mangled bodies lying in the heap under Pride Rock. Then the screen twisted on itself again, and Scar's skull appeared in front of the picture. I screamed when the skull spoke. "Heather, Satan lives in the depths of each good soul. You can't escape him. You can fight him. Give up before he tears you apart." Then the computer went to black and shut off. As much as I tried, the computer won't turn on again. I still can't get it to turn on. Every night I see those images, I hear those words. "Give up before he tears you apart." Sometimes in the middle of the night I look at the computer and that skull is there on the screen. I can feel something in my house now. It's present. My mother and father can't feel it. Their innocence hasn't been taken from them as mine has. This is why I'm writing this. My dreams have turned to nightmares. My sweet memories into tormenting ones. Nothing is left for me anymore, and I am going to take Scar's advice. These are my last words, and I feel complete to ask you, what are you going to do? What do you have to live for? Well, that was a bit of a creepypasta, guys. This is my first creepypasta reading. You can search this up on Google. Type in The Lion King Sega Game creepypasta and you can read it for yourself. Right, This is all I've got to do now. See you soon. Alice Angel is coming soon. Don't worry. Bye.